Minister, 13-year-old Cara Darmody will hold a protest outside the Dáil again today. Cara is protesting for improved autism services and for the government to live up to its promises to disabled people and their families. She has first-hand experience of the difficulties endured by people with disabilities. Her two younger brothers, Neil and John, are autistic, and her family have had to fight for every single service that they've ever gotten. So many families have to fight and witness nothing but broken promises and threadbare supports from a state that simply doesn't prioritise them. Cara has been lobbying government ministers and HSE officials for years now. She met with the then Taoiseach Micheál Martin in 2022 and Leo Varadkar in 2023. Tomorrow, she will meet with Simon Harris. Speaking to the Irish Examiner yesterday, Cara said, "Sound bites and promises are all well and good, but families desperately need action." That's not just action for a lucky percentage, but action for all. Minister, we probably couldn't count the number of disability protests that we've seen outside the Dáil, the number of people who come before the Disability Matters Committee week after week after week to explain how the absence of services is quite literally ruining their lives. We can't count the number of reports we've had on the failures of service provision. And the rhetoric from government never seems to match reality. Week after week, the various Taoiseach have stood in here and spoken about how focused they are on disability services and disability rights, how much they care about disabled people's right to live independently. And then another report lands, showing us again that these words were never backed up with action. And then a new Taoiseach lands and sets up a new committee, meets more campaigners and makes more promises. Enough reports, enough committees, enough protests and enough promises. Cara should be at home attending school and enjoying time with her friends and family. She and others should not have to fight for basic services, feeling like there's no other option but to mount a protest. Minister, at the end of last year, almost 9,000 children with disabilities were overdue an assessment of need. Not one of the Children's Disability Network teams around the country is fully staffed. So many children denied an appropriate school place. That's not to mention the failure in respite services, pay parity for Section 9 workers. The list goes on and on and on. Minister, can you tell me how many children are now waiting for an assessment of need? How many of them have been waiting for more than 3 months? And what is the Taoiseach going to tell Cara tomorrow that is any different to what the two previous Taoiseach have said to her before?
Thank you. Deputy Cabinet Minister, please.
Thank you, Deputy. And if I could just at the outset use this opportunity to wish you well and congratulate you on your own news and your partner as well. Thank you in particular for raising this issue. I think all of our objectives here, including Cara's, is to make sure that every young person, every child can fulfil their full potential. And really that means that no matter who you are, no matter where you have come from, no matter what your family situation, no matter what school you attend or what services you need, no matter what additional needs you might need, that they are provided and that every child is given the opportunity to achieve their full potential. That's our goal, that's your goal, and I absolutely believe that's Cara's goal. And I just want to commend Cara for such a young woman. She clearly has a very bright future ahead of her, but that she is taking this time and using her situation to advocate not just for her family but for those who perhaps feel they don't have a voice, or for children coming behind her, is admirable. And we want to work with Cara and others like Cara to do what we can. The Taoiseach, as you said, met Cara yesterday, actually, I think, briefly, and will meet again with her and her father. And I think the Taoiseach and this government in general has shown our commitment to do more. And we know that we need to do more in the provision of disability services, in the provision of educational services, and we are doing just that. We have a budget of €2.9 billion for disability services, the highest budget ever before. We have a quarter of our entire educational budget that's now been spent on special education, an increase of 113 million alone this year compared to last year. When it comes to reducing waiting lists for assessment of needs, I understand absolutely how important it is for a child to be assessed as early as possible. The impact that that can have on their future and their potential as they get older is immense. My own sister works as an SNA in a preschool where you're dealing with children as young as 3 and 4 and 5. So to get that additional support, but to get that assessment and understand what those needs are as early on as possible, I fully agree. We're doing what we can to reduce that waiting list, working with Minister Rabbitte, working with Minister Hildegard Naughton. The Taoiseach now chairs a Cabinet Committee, which he established since becoming Taoiseach. And in the 10 weeks since then, an additional funding of €6.89 million, 12 million overall, has already been allocated to address the waiting list that you mentioned. It won't address all of it. It will reduce it by 2,500 young people. And I can see that, we can all see that in the numbers that have been impacted and that will be supported through that additional funding in the months to come. But we want to do more. We want to make sure that it's those that are waiting the longest are supported and helped as quickly as possible. We also need to make sure that we have the staff to be able to carry out those assessments, and that's where we have had significant challenge. We're not the only country, but we have significant challenge, and so we're working to increase the number of therapists, to recruit more dietitians, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, psychologists, social workers, speech and language therapists, to work as part of the nationwide Children's Disability Network teams to provide important therapies to children. My understanding is that 161 offers have already gone out this year to try and fill some of those places, and more work will happen, and I have no doubt in this upcoming budget that even more funding will be allocated to make sure that those assessments of needs can be carried out, that that waiting list can be reduced, but insofar as possible, as many children and young people, irrespective of who they are and where they are, that they will be provided with the support that they need.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Kearns.
First of all, thank you very much for the congratulations. Minister, respectfully, that's the kind of rhetoric that I'm saying doesn't match up with reality. So you're talking about people reaching their full potential and people's needs being met. And there's a very stark contrast between that kind of language and the language that comes back in reports from the Ombudsman, reports that are called things like wasted lives. We've seen all the reports and we've heard all of the promises over and over again. We've seen committee after committee. And Cara has had meeting after meeting. You're talking about the budget allocation there. The department's own capacity review said they need about 1 billion to meet the unmet needs of disabled people in Ireland. And in the last budget, 65 million was allocated. So there's never been a real or meaningful attempt to address it from a budgetary perspective. You're talking about recruitment in the Children's Disability Network teams. And saying there's about 160 offers. There's about 700 vacant posts. So even if those 160 offers were accepted, it's going to be a mere drop in the ocean. But instead of telling us how many offers have been made, could you update us on how many have been accepted, how many of the positions are actually filled, and what is government doing to reach the 700 vacant posts that need to be filled? This government also promised to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. There's potentially a few months left now of this government. So is there a date for that?
Thank you, Deputy.
I'm wondering when there might be pay parity for Section 39 workers or reality or school places. But the reality is we're 4 years into this government and there's only a couple of months left. We're 12 years of Fine Gael in government.
Okay,
so I've come to the conclusion the only way we'll meet the unmet needs of disabled people in this country is with a new government. Is there anything you can say today that will lead us to believe that it will actually be any different? And I mean actual actions rather than promises, meetings and reports.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. What I can assure you and what I can assure Cara and many young people like her is that we are acting. And I think that's clear in the fact that €780 million has been added in additional funding for those with special and additional needs over the past 4 years of this specific government. What I can assure you is that additional funding has been allocated to make sure that those waiting lists are reduced. What I can assure you is that a quarter of our budget, an increase of 113 million, is now being spent on special education, making sure that those who are in mainstream get the resources that they need through SNAs, through special teachers, that those who are in special classes, that we have more and more special classes coming through every year. There was an approval for 400 new special classes this year, and already 375 of those have been sanctioned by the National Council for Special Education. So we are investing, we are making sure that we have the physical infrastructure, we are making sure that we are planning for the resources, the teachers, the the specialist workers that are required for this, but we're also making sure that young people at the earliest stage possible are getting that assessment of needs. You asked about the figures. There were 9,980 awaiting assessment of needs at the beginning of this year. 7,550 children will receive assessments of needs this year. As I said, it doesn't address all of the waiting list, but I have no doubt that Minister Rabbitte, working with the Taoiseach and our colleagues, Minister Hildegard Naughton, who's now a Cabinet Minister, I think stressing the importance of this and the educational needs of young people, that more money will be allocated in this year's budget to make even more progress. I'm not saying we're there yet, but we will make more progress.
Thank you very much.